This is Kristen over at Runyon. We just like to thank everybody for joining us again for our webinar series. Today we have Owen from Ameripolish who's going to be giving us his presentation. And we really appreciate everybody coming here today. We have Vasco on the webinar as well. He'll be sending you guys a message over here on the right-hand side in the chat bar so that you guys can ask questions throughout the presentation today. Just so everybody knows the format of the webinar, we'll give Owen's introduction and then we'll hand the floor over to him. He'll give us his PowerPoint presentation on the screen. Then we'll enter a Q&A session with Owen. And then at the very end, we'll do our giveaway. Our giveaway today from Ameripolish is going to be a maintenance bundle. So we will pick that winner at the very end of the webinar. So thank you again, guys, for being here with us. So just a brief background on Owen. He joined Ameripolish in 2012 and is a registered architect with a professional background in commercial, industrial, and residential construction. Owen has worked closely with the Ameripolish team to develop detailed specifications and identify emerging trends in decorative and agricultural or architectural concrete. He has also spearheaded the educational content for the architectural community to help them explore the benefits of high-performance polished, colored, and exposed concrete. So welcome, Owen.
Thank you, Kristen. Can you hear me fine?
Yep, we can hear you great, Owen.
Yep.
Okay, good. I also have Scott Miller here with me. He was a sales representative, obviously works very close with Runyon, and very happy to have him here. I think I had to wake him up to get him to come over here. I will go through this. Let me give you a quick overview of our company, Ameripolish. Originally, Clint Howell and a couple of partners, they were a polishing company. They were contractors. And they were on a certain project trying to polish the concrete that had an acid or reactive stained floor, and they started to notice large gray patches on the floor and were concerned about how to fix that issue. Of course, Clint Howell, very smart guy, started to dig into possible fix. I believe there's a gentleman in Canada who was started thinking about concrete dyes, Bob Harris. Now with SSI, was doing some work with that as well. And in the end, that's how the classic dye product came about. It was the first dye product released to this industry. Quickly about the values, just kind of give you an idea of how I perceive this company. At the end of the day, again, it is contractor focused, and they use these. They're very hands-on, apply all the products themselves. Consistent performance. They've been out in the field. Temperature was the slab near freezing? Was there condensation on the slab? Moisture issues? Is this contractor that's supplying the product, has he been around for 20 years or did he start 2 weeks ago? Really, all of the development revolves around these type of questions. Quality. Of course, I work with the sales aspect too. And we speak about raw materials. To be honest, you would expect, talk about margins, 3, 5, 10% margins. If we swap this out, et cetera, I never hear that brought up in a conversation. It's always about this is the better material. This is the one we're going to go with. Durability and forgiveness. After you hand this over to the owner, we see everything. All types of bad things happening to the flooring, and usually the owner is responsible for that. So we're trying to think ahead in order to give the owner a good impression of that floor, and hopefully other people will look at polished or exposed concrete as well. And again, thinking about the contractor, callbacks. Nobody wants to do a job and come back again, moisture, application, et cetera, any of those errors, and have to redo the job. It's so labor intensive for the cost, and the chemicals are such a relatively small portion that if you have to go back for a callback, it's very hard to make a profit off of that. Sure don't have to tell you. Pricing, quality product. I would perceive that our company would look at, okay, we have X competitor here, or competitor A and competitor B. They're selling this product for about this much. Where should we be at? Again, I've never been involved in one of those conversations. They develop a product, they think what it's worth for them to manufacture that product, and they put it out. The big benefit for the end user is typically, if you look at square foot cost, it is a very, very good buy as a rule. And accountability, I think we're one of the rare companies that everything is manufactured in-house. We do not private label anyone else's products under our brand. So for all of these technical issues that do happen, and they happen all times of the day and weekends, is we do know the products very, very well. So you're troubleshooting, you're speaking to experts. Quickly innovations, obviously classic, the first penetrating concrete die. Then we released Sherlock, which is the first multi-carrier, either a solvent or water with UV inhibitors. Easy Etch, a synthetic acid. You no longer had to neutralize those products. It was self-neutralizing. OS, which stands for Overlayment System. This is developed this for a large overlayment system manufacturer who said, hey, we're wanting to get color, sealing, et cetera, and some of the other products we're using specifically for color are not working due to the polymers, et cetera, in our products. We developed that, went through a full line. SR2, not the first penetrating sealer. There were multiple prior to that, except for the issue was liability, particularly in a public space, to where the previous products, if you burnish those, came into certain contact, et cetera, it was a health hazard and basically a lawsuit waiting to happen. So they were looking for this specific retailer product that would perform and, again, not be hazardous long term. So SR2 was our answer to that. Color Solve, the first carrier that was designed for concrete flooring. Kind of interesting, as that product was developed, both Clint and Carl, the company, were looking for what you would call a safer alternative, looking at flash points, et cetera, something to compete against the alcohol and acetone and other products, and that was great. It worked fine. We also realized that it penetrates very well and it makes the die go almost twice as far. So interestingly enough, is nobody ever talks about the safety aspect of Color Solve, just the penetrating ability. And last but not least, Smart Floor, lots of maintenance systems out there prior, but as far as sustaining a finish to where you do not have to come through periodically and redo the floor, if that was your choice, this was the first system to hit the market. Okay, quickly go through these, and again, I know some of this seems very basic, but hopefully it will support some of the information on the products. Why exposed concrete? You know, I have an architecture background, we heard about sustainability and lots of other ideas. I really think that it has very little to do with why it has done so well. Particularly in 2008 and beyond, this is one of the few industries that continued to grow. And there were a lot of cost savings with moving over to this system. So as you see before you are some average price savings versus your traditional VCT flooring. And at this stage, my opinion, with the millions of square feet that are saving these costs per year, as I anticipate, fully hope that exposed concrete is going to continue. Okay, maintenance. Before we get there, maintenance is extremely, extremely important, and it is one of the #1 calls that we get is a floor failure that is tied to maintenance. Obviously, you can see from the Cintas study that they had done, of all the multiple hundreds of items that a person would associate with a dirty store or negative impact, dirty floors were the 4th. It was that high. You know, obviously unclean restrooms, odors, et cetera. And stains and spills, minus the dirt itself, was actually ranked 7th. 81% noticed that. And shifting more specific to the female shopper in a retail setting, the #1 thing that they notice is that the floor is dirty. That's before anything else. And to keep them in the store, which is obviously buying more product, you know, the helpfulness of the staff, the service, et cetera, is still a factor, but appearing messy and just unclean is the #1 reason. So you can see that that's a particularly important topic for companies that tailor to them. Quickly go through the 4 steps. You know, with our products, this is how we organize those. Preparation of the concrete. Obviously, you can see what we call the checkerboard effect in this image. That is from where tile was applied prior, and that's where the moisture escaped, leaving that permanent stains. Obviously, the concrete just has to be clean overall. Really two approaches, or how we categorize those. One is an etching agent. This is typically for what we call your biological stains or organic stains. Etches the surface, surfactants, et cetera, multiple ways to approach that. But the bigger problem is oil. And what we'll see traditionally is many contractors will use like an oxalic acid or something along those lines of dilution, and they will apply that to the oil, and it will appear to be clean relatively quick, within a few minutes. Unfortunately, that really doesn't do a great deal at all. You have water vapor that is pushing up underneath the slab, and of course water and oil do not mix, and eventually you will see that oil migrate to the surface again and continue to until it is out of the concrete in total. We do have a great product for that, which is called oil remediation. It's the one I did not put a slide up here, but it will actually digest the oil. It is a permanent fix, works very well over a week or two's time. But again, in the United States, people want the quick fix, and there is no quick fix for oil. Densification or densifiers, obviously, again, some of these topics you're very aware of. From the contractor side, it does tend to make the floor easier to polish. I had a call this morning out in California where the concrete was very soft, and they were just having a lot of problems with that. Now, for the end user, there are really three categories that we see consistently. One is the resistance to liquids, which is somewhat stain repellency, and others just hazardous material. We'll get into the concrete. Very importantly is the surface dusting, obviously to control that, and the coefficient of friction. This is a much bigger topic with public places than you would imagine. Of course, that is the number one lawsuit, is your slip and falls, and a densified floor has a tendency to maintain a number for a longer period of time. Quickly, densifiers, just to put this in perspective, obviously they react with the free lime, which is the calcium hydroxide, and converts that into the calcium silicate hydrate. This is the calcium hydroxide. Whenever you place your concrete, initially, 28 days later, as the concrete cures and it's converting a lot of these elements into the calcium silicate hydrate, unfortunately, at the end of the day, at the end of that month, not everything has converted. So usually around 1/4 of the volume of the cement is never converted. It's just this soft material. And even worse is that over time with exposure to liquids, et cetera, is it can actually leach out of the concrete, which leaves a lot of porosity for potential staining. The CSH, this is the good stuff. Calcium silicate hydrate becomes a gel property, again, from that conversion. Usually about 50% of the paste, not including the 25% calcium hydroxide that you would like to convert. And this is what gives it its strength. Lots of strength, resists moisture, etc. Another quick benefit of densifiers is dependent on the dye and the colorant. Obviously, dyes can migrate. With excessive moisture, they can either penetrate too far into the slab or leave the surface. Now, densifier, I always say it is not bulletproof, but it does help to lock in the colorant in the visible layer, and that's all that matters. You can see that. Avoid a failure. Okay, this sheet here, I am not a scientist, I'm not a lab expert, I'm just a person that used to write specifications in an architect firm. And when I came into this industry, I saw all of these different carriers for the concrete densifiers. And so I asked, I said, which one of these are best? I've had multiple salespeople telling me each one is great. And the truth is, each one of them do something very well, but none of them do everything great. And again, there will be arguments against this. I'm not really here to argue one way or the other, but I'll show you. These are my observations. Sodium and potassium. Obviously, sodium, both of these very old original densifiers, good products. Reaction time, sodium is the slowest, And obviously potassium is still slow, but not quite to the level of sodium. I think of concrete as Swiss cheese with all the holes and voids, is give or take, and this will vary across the region and across the world, but usually about 60% of the voids that can react in concrete are what are considered large pores. Now, for those large pores, sodium and potassium are the king. They do a very good job. Still, after all of these years, they're still doing a great job with those pores. The problem is the medium and small pores, and again, you'll hear arguments, but under a microscope, they cannot penetrate. They're too large. They cannot get in there and have a reaction. Well, some of the people in the labs, they knew that this was an issue, and lithium, one of the main reasons it was looked at as an alternative is because it does penetrate smaller pores, has the capacity to do that. Problem with lithium is it reacts very fast. You know, I've seen marketing to where it dwells and goes deeper. Actually, unfortunately, it's the opposite. It's very hard to have that to dwell, so it tends to remain at the surface itself. Colloidal, this is the latest densifier, lots of sales, lots of information on this, how it penetrates very deep. Again, I'm telling you from what I've seen is, unfortunately, it's actually the least penetrating carrier, or I wouldn't say carrier, it functions a little bit differently, but it is the least penetrating product of those shown on this screen. Colloidal is a solid, it's a particle. It's really about 150 nanometers is the smallest I've heard of. I've seen people advertise 5 nanometers. No one has seen that. No one has seen any proof of why that is. And why that is important is that the pores of the concrete are much smaller, the vast majority. A good example would be our Color Juice product. The pigments in that are around 50 nanometers, which is 1/3 the size of colloidal. And obviously, our Color Juice product does not penetrate 7 inches into the concrete, so it's just physically impossible. But it is good coating and good stain protectant. Here's on the lithium products. We were speaking about the penetration. Not all products, like your 40% waterproofers or silanes, et cetera, all the way down to lithium silicates, not everything is necessarily equal. These are 2 products that had a tracer dye applied, so you could see how far it was penetrating the material, which here is a cementitious, we call them pills, it looks like a pill, 2 products. Okay, now after those products have reacted and penetrated, we took a section of those and then magnified the 2 just to see what penetration we had. As you can see on the left, with the blue tracer dye, it appears to be, very topical or somewhat. On the right-hand side, you obviously see a little bit more penetration and reaction. And here is one of the most important things that I've found of all of this is hearing of failures with the floor that is dusting or abrading fast. Well, if you think of either one of these products, out of fairness, but specifically the one on the left, if you apply that at a 1 or 200 grit, and then you come back over that area with a planetary grinder with the equivalent to 200 grits, give or take, that product is wiped off. There is no densification of the concrete. It's gone. Nobody can see it. Nobody knows. Yes, they did apply the densifier, but you might as well have skipped that step. Okay. That being said, all of the issues that we spoke about that was our 3D HS and HSL densifier. This was our answer to some of those questions. We have 3 different size silicates that go into this material. Again, trying to hit the different areas, large, medium, small pores. The challenge with blending some of these densifiers many years ago was that if you, say you took a sodium and a lithium and a colloidal, and you try to introduce those into one container, they were not stable. That material would react, you would have no shelf life. You cannot even get it to the job site. But now that is much better. Now you can stabilize these for, several years. So that was the biggest challenge of mixing these and having them play well together. Protection of the concrete. simply, you have 4 categories that we come across your cure and seals. These are essentially densifiers. Some of those have an acrylic. They work okay. I always think cure and seal, it's a bit of an overstatement. We could probably do that too. We choose not to. Then you have your topical, all the way from waxes through the very tough polyaspartics. Obviously, we do not manufacture those. That is an internal choice. Our chemist and one of the part owners has a background in coatings, and in his words, is he's seen so many failures due to trapped moisture underneath the coating and delamination that he really doesn't want to fool with them anymore. Now, they obviously have a role, but they're very specialized. You really have to know what you're doing. Third category, semi-topical, semi-penetrating acrylic guards. Very common in our industry. They do a pretty good job, and especially for the price, they do really well. And the last approach is penetrating where nothing is left on the surface. Typical formulations are silane and siloxane for both oil and water repellency. The silicates help densify the concrete, some acid resistance. Again, no wear surface is the big bonus for those products. If you have heavy traffic, it's not going to be near the issue it would be with other products. Quickly on sealing, topical or penetrating, our company's focus is we focus on what's called DOI, or distinctness of image. This is very similar, and you may be aware of this. Like, you take a gloss meter and you're measuring the gloss reflectivity. Well, a DOI measurement tool will actually take one additional measurement, and as you can see on the image on the left, is the DOI is trying to measure how accurate that reflection is in the floor, not just how much light's being refracted, but how accurate it is. You can see the windows and the mullions. Why we're pushing that is that we think that is what's going to help keep the industry healthy and thriving, because we hear complaints from topical sealers wearing out, too quick, or the perception that they're wearing out too fast, and we are just a big proponent of the DOI approach. Downside is we would probably make more money selling topical sealers, but again, we're looking at in a holistic view. Topical sealers here, just a graphic for that is with his shoes in that area, is the grit underneath the shoe is the equivalent of 200 to 400 grit diamonds. And obviously the first 75 feet is kind of a rule of thumb inside of a establishment through the vestibule, etc., receives a tremendous amount of abrasion. Finally, the dust walks off of your shoes and starts to improve over that distance. But again, unfortunately, that is your first perception when you walk in as the worst part of the store, as a rule. Penetrating sealers, obviously you are walking across the concrete. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have a topical sealer to enhance the gloss. However, again, you are not going to have near the durability that you would if you used a fine polished concrete floor with a penetrating sealer. Just lasts much longer. Another quick word on stain protection. These are, again, a few of the main items that we hear about often. Moisture penetration. When you think of moisture, just think of staining agents. The stain follows the moisture itself. Hopefully it resists that. The window of opportunity is, it's very easy to say. You typically get what you pay for. And again, speaking to the highly polyaspartics, they're great products. They're also relatively expensive to apply those. So depending on what you apply, and educate the homeowner and the business owner, is this needs to be cleaned up in X amount of time. And the last is UV stable. There are still products out there that are not UV stable, and either light coming through even with low E glazing or an exterior application, they amber, delaminate, oxidize very fast. Unfortunately, UV stabilizers are very inexpensive, but just a warning to you that not all products out there now are UV stable. It severely limits the life. Common stains that you will see, obviously the two approaches. One is the oil stain to the left, which penetrates and which has its own difficulty with that, and to the right is an acid etch. Acid etches tend to be a little more topical, but obviously they do quite a bit of damage due to the pH difference between the two products. So obviously in both of these, the key would be to try to suspend it in the first place. We would never say that your concrete is not going to stain. It's how easy it is to repair after it has happened. Stain protectants, just a few items to always be aware of. Obviously the UV stabilizers mentioned. Make sure that it's formulated to work with any type of color in a densifier. Water damage. A lot of these products, whenever you apply those, if it is exposed to moisture either through the slab itself or above, they will white out, and that is from the materials reacting with itself in the moisture, and unfortunately it has to be stripped off. It's a mess. Last, but very importantly, the coefficient of friction. Good story is well, not a good story, a terrible story. Retailer that we worked with, they obviously test every store because they know they will have lawsuits, and they were doing some of the testing prior to applying a topical sealer. So when they finally walked into a courtroom, it was discovered that the tests were performed before the sealer was applied, and the sealer they were applying was very slippery, nowhere near compliant. Unfortunately, it cost them a lot of money to learn that lesson. So always think of the sealer and how safe that is going to be for the people that use it. Our base or core sealers and products are the 3DSP and SPE. 3DSP we've had for a good while. It's been a very good sealer. The SPE is just a little bit thicker build and a little bit has greater durability to abrasion, and both have really good products. Obviously, semi-topical, about 80% of these products penetrate the first application. You always want to do a couple of light applications, make sure they flash, but good products overall. Do not require burnishing. Some products require that happens. Ours does not, under many conditions, all conditions, and no moisture sensitivity, which is, again, the thought of having to strip a floor and redo it is not good. SR2, this is our penetrating product. Again, as mentioned earlier, the safety aspect, you can see in this image. I like this story, so I'm going to tell it now that I have you. You can see the pickles. There's a retailer that has what they call their pickle aisle, and it has provided a lot of stains and obviously the perception of the floor being dirty. Well, if you walk in these stores, you will notice the vinegar, the pickles, hot sauce, barbecue sauce, a lot of those will be concentrated into one aisle, and it is only because those are the main staining agents and they're trying to limit those into one area. The topical coatings, waxes, you have to strip them off. It was expensive, have to bring in outside labor. So the SR2 was the answer to keep these suspended so they did not penetrate the concrete. Again, it is not going to last forever, but it is much, much easier to fix. And the last subject on this is what we call the SR2 and 3D combo. Actually, Ryan Clacking's the first person I've heard of that used this and told us about it, and it works well. Now a lot of people use it. But this is essentially trying to get some of the good properties of both products. Always put your guard down first. If you apply the SR2, nothing will stick or bond to that surface. So that's a big no-no. Make sure you do one or the other. Obviously, the 3DSP the guard will have some durability. It'll provide a layer of protection over the top, and the SR2, it will. I've seen it done both ways, and the SR2 does help prevent moisture and staining of the acrylic product. It's amazing that it does work. Maintenance of the concrete, lowest maintenance floor solution. This is a huge issue from K through 12, retail, everywhere else. They said, we bought this, we were sold it was a no maintenance floor. And sometimes you want to tell these people, if you listen to yourself, it sounds insane. Of course you have to maintain it. You have to clean the floor. But that was their perception, and that's why we're having a lot of the issues that we still have recurring. The three main issues that we come across excuse me, one is Densifier was not used, or if it was used, it was abraded off in the process, as we looked at that lithium earlier. The second was stain protection was not used or maintained. Some people say, well, this Densifier is a cure and seal. Therein lies some of the problems. Or, of course, they never reapply. The stain protection is needed, and that's, you think of a large, heavy traffic area, in 3 to 6 months, you're absolutely going to see wear on an acrylic guard. And the final is a routine maintenance program. The vast majority are using the wrong chemicals and products on the floor, and a lot of people just don't follow it. You have a person who's always done it this way, he's always cleaned concrete, and that's how he's going to clean that interior floor. Unfortunately, he could ruin it. Okay, the problems from a building owner standpoint, and these are recurring themes that I hear, this is what the owner has issues with. Specialized labor, having people come in to fix the floor. It's great. It's great for our industry. Just to give you a heads up, as this is more and more as time goes on, as they were trying to move this internally for the savings of the cost, which leads into the second, the maintenance cost. Equipment, nothing specialized. They want to use what they have and make it very easy. And the repair and stain remediation, obviously time is of the essence, particularly, if you have to close down, say, a retail setting, you have to close this aisle down to do a repair. One, it's expensive, and two, the shoppers do not have access to get in there and purchase anything. So that's, in the eye of a retailer, that is a big problem. And last but not least is minimize inventory. Janitor's closets or custodial closets, none of them have a huge amount of room, packed with all kinds of stuff, and they just don't want to have either the expense or to dedicate more space to something as what they perceive as simple as cleaning their floors. The other problem, and this is where Smart Floor was developed, was outside of your standard maintenance pads, et cetera, you have what is called a dip pad. For those who do not know, that is a diamond impregnated pad. Very common. They've been around for quite a while and have been the go-to for exposed concrete flooring. However, we had fortunate that we're a company that retailers come to, and a large retailer came to us and said, we are having orange peeling. Had a consultant come through, and you can see the appearance of that on the upper right-hand side. And it does two things. It traps moisture, and it looks bad. It doesn't refract light. So with some studies, is they found that the diamonds that are sprayed, typically sprayed on a diamond impregnated pad, each little fiber acts like a spring. You can see that image just to the right of that. And that spring action, as you use these on the concrete floor, is the diamonds are not aggressive enough to cut the fines, the sands, et cetera, that are in the concrete, but the cement itself is soft enough. So what they will do is they will, for lack of better words, bounce up over the aggregate and then dip down into the Portland cement base, and over a period of time, it just aggravates that condition worse and worse. And that's where the orange peel effect comes from in a concrete floor that uses those pads. Looking at that, as we knew the solution would be an abrasive that cut flat, cut straight across. That's where our DOI inserts, why we developed those. And you can see to the right, these are a graphic representation, but you're wanting to cut that flat at all times, abrasive into cement. This may be a bit excessive, but a very interesting observation about DOI, is again, you have the DOI or the gloss levels, is so many specifications, or still are, and they're going to be for a long time, are reliant upon a gloss level to achieve when you come off of the floor. Well, unfortunately, you can see these two images here. One has the orange peel effect and straight. Is both of these probably have a similar gloss reading. You can have gloss readings 60 on two different floors. One's the DOI and the orange peel floor. And one appears much, much cleaner than the next floor, but they both hit the gloss levels. Again, that's why the DOI, or distinctness of image, we always encourage everybody to consider that and hopefully adopt that long term. Here are the beds that we manufacture. Again, the Smart Floor, the diamond agglomerate, that is a patented process that was developed internally. We make all of our abrasives here in the state of Arkansas. Everything is made and manufactured across the street from my facility. It was mentioned earlier in the presentation about a sustainable finish. It is. You can have a floor that has, say, 50 DOI, and if they consistently run these pads, say the daily maintenance pad over that floor, it will actually improve over time. Okay, cleaning solutions. Boy, this is one of the biggest main reasons we get calls as well for failures, is the vast majority of products that are being used on concrete floors have no business being applied. You look at the safety data sheets, it's the first thing we do. Alcohol, usually those products end with an OLS, and those are all solvents. They're solvent if you have colorant or dye in the floor, they're destroying those products. Any type of topical sealer, it is working on those. And before we go into this list, the biggest argument is, well, these are diluted at a level to where there's not going to be any harm to the floor at all. Well, then you walk into, again, back into the areas where they're maintaining, and these people that are taking care of the floors, it makes them very strong because, a little more is always going to work better. But again, unfortunately, it's attacking the concrete. Peroxides, usually in IDES, oxidizers, destructive to concrete in many cleaners. Chelating agents, these are they work by magnetic charge to remove some of the debris, the metal ions. Unfortunately, concrete is also negatively and positively charged, so chelating agents actually attack the concrete surface. And these chelating agents are relatively inexpensive, so we're wishing they would disappear, but we don't see that happening for a while. Ionized water, some machines have people looking for a more green approach to cleaning their floors with the auto scrubbers, so they ionize the water. We absolutely recommend against that. We've fell into a few failed floor scenarios, and then we took a pH stick and stuck that into the ionized water, and it was not good. It was destroying the floor. Petroleum-based solvents, Simple Green Pine Sol, which is a go-to for the people that are not educated about taking care of the floor. Again, these are solvents, terrible, absolutely terrible for a concrete floor. And last but not least, pH neutral. This is the argument we hear always at the top, but it's a pH neutral product. Well, a pH neutral product can contain alcohol, peroxides, chelating agents, ionized water, and petroleum-based solvents. The pH neutral really, I don't want to say means nothing, but it's insignificant. And to go further with that, if concrete is a base material with, say, a pH of 10 or 11, and you're applying a product that has pH 7, pH neutral, is you're actually applying a acidic substance on the top of that surface. So over time, it will degrade the concrete. Our cleaner, the rejuvenating cleaner, is I'll be honest, it's a cutthroat industry when you step into the maintenance. We did not want to have anything to do with it, but based upon the information I just gave you on the cleaning products, we had to come up with something. And I always call this our insurance policy to make sure the floor is taken care of correctly. This product has some of the penetrating SR2 components and also Densifier. The neatest thing I've seen is we had a piece of concrete that would absorb water readily, never sealed, never treated, and ran a test the equivalent to 5 to 6 weeks with the rejuvenating cleaner, and towards the middle and at the end it would bead water and any type of stains just from using this cleaner only. It's really amazing stuff. We also have a new formula of this that has some antimicrobial properties to that, certainly not to replace any EPA registered product, but it does help support the issues we're going through currently. Stain protection, just again, looking at the issues, it has to be reapplied as needed. Always tell them it is not a zero maintenance floor. But again, the refreshing item is that it is a lower cost, and in an up economy or down, I do see this industry continuing to go forward and moving up. That being said, that was all of my spiel that I have. If anyone has any questions, Scott and I would be more than happy to try to answer those, or of course you have Kristen and Bosco, who are experts themselves.
Thank you again, guys. That was a great presentation. You know, what I've found in the last week of doing these is, you know, even though we talk to you guys every day and talk to our clients, you know, actually seeing these presentations and going through them again, I learned a whole heck of a lot. So I'm sure our customers out there in the field that are watching this or going to watch this later on are going to gain a lot of knowledge from this. So again, Owen, Scott, thank you. And just like Owen mentioned, guys, if you have any questions right now, feel free to type them out. If not, I do want to ask just some general questions. And one of them in particular that I get asked all the time is, you know, well, with different aggregates in different parts of the country, you know, we're servicing people from California to Maine, from Maine to Florida, and Florida to Texas. So, you know, we come across all types of different concretes, different types of aggregates. And one thing that really sticks out to me about Ameripolish is the fact that they have specific densifier that may help for certain regions. Do you want to touch on that a little bit, Owen?
Sure, absolutely. That is our 2DPL product, and you're exactly right, Vasco, especially Florida. We were going to call it 2DFL for Florida, but we thought that'd be offensive, so we changed it to PL. It is very fast reacting, and it is an excellent thing to have in your arsenal for soft concrete. Some of the softer slabs, and again, international, have some of the same issues, is in order to get through the polishing process and let the diamonds do their work, is you can apply this between each grinding stage, and it moves fast enough and hard enough to where it doesn't hold up scheduling for the project. But it is a very, very good product, and I just wish more people were aware of that specific product. Works well.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So those of you guys out there in Florida, working with that, you know, special Florida concrete you guys have down there, please know that Ameripolish does have a great solution for that extra soft, sandy material. It looks like we've got a question here. From Jose Alberto Rodriguez. He says, how is it best way to apply the sealer, with the spray pumps or with paint rollers? I don't, well, it's best.
I can answer that for our products.
Probably microfiber pads, but if you want to touch on that, Owen or Scott.
Absolutely. I'll speak to our acrylic guards, or in general, is obviously, first off, a water-based product, you always wanted to apply in 2 applications. And the reason that is, the old solvent-based sealers, they would flash. They would put the moisture out really fast, and they would harden. Water-based has its limitations, so it's trying to accelerate that flashing. So if you have too thick of a build, when you apply these products, is you can trap moisture internally, and you will see a haze or a whitening of the product. So first off, at least 2 applications, always thin applications, and always spray with a conical tip, and always follow, just as you said, Vasco, with a pre-wetted microfiber mop, just making sure that there's no product staining on the surface to whiten out. But as far as rolling, any of our products and the standard ones that we know in this industry, we would recommend against, especially with water-based or water-based product.
Great. Excellent. Kristen, do you have any questions or comments or concerns? Or
no, I think the presentation went great. Owen, thank you so much for doing that. I learned a lot from it, and hopefully everybody, all of our attendees, learned a lot from it as well. I think it was very educational.
One last thing, guys, for all you out there, if because I know a lot of times we can't always get everybody and everybody's crews out to watch this and kind of sit in for this. If anybody wants a copy of not just this webinar, but any webinar we have hosted up until this point, please feel free, reach out to Kristen and myself or anybody on the Runyon team for that matter. Let us know. We can send you a copy because all of these webinars are recorded. So we can send you a copy of it in your email. You can review it with your whole team or whatever, if you can utilize it for future trainings, et cetera, et cetera. So don't feel like if you weren't able to get on, you've kind of missed out on it.
Great. We'll do our giveaway real quick. The name that we pulled at the very beginning was Ricardo Sanchez. So Ricardo, if you could reach out to myself or Vasco, we will send you out that maintenance bundle package from Ameripolish, and we'll get that on the road for you this week.
Excellent.
Okay.
Great.
Well, if no one has any other questions, thank you very much, Kristen and Vasco, for helping put this together, and Angela. And if anyone has any questions, yourselves or anyone participating, please give us a call. We'd love to talk to you.
Perfect.